Remember when a chrome-skinned shapeshifter, a leather-jacketed cyborg, and a kid on a dirt bike rewrote summer blockbusters? Arnold, Linda Hamilton, Robert Patrick, and a budget that nearly sank its studio. Today we're counting down 15 weird facts you never knew about. Terminator 2. Number 15. The Galleria scene is one of the great setups in action cinema. John Connor is at the arcade, blissfully unaware that two very different machines are closing in. It feels like a single, seamless location. It is not, and that is the first thing worth knowing about Terminator 2. The entire sequence was assembled from three completely separate Southern California malls intercut to read as one place. Exterior shots came from Northridge Fashion Center at 9301 Tampa Avenue. Interiors were filmed at Santa Monica Place at 4th Street and Broadway. Additional shots used the Sherman Oaks Galleria, the same mall you see in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. The Northridge exterior was destroyed in the 1994 earthquake and no longer exists in the form you see on screen. James Cameron and his location managers chose the San Fernando Valley geography deliberately. The canal chase that erupts out of the mall snakes through real Los Angeles drainage infrastructure at Bull Creek in North Hills, grounding the sequence in a specific working-class Southern California world. Every location choice was a storytelling choice. The stitched geography creates a chase that would have been physically impossible to film in a single real building. Next time you watch, the wide exterior shots and the tight arcade interiors are never the same structure, and the boy running through those corridors had never acted before Cameron found him. Number 14. Think about what John Connor has to carry in this film. The rebellious smirk, the bowl cut, the motorcycle confidence, the genuine tears in the steel mill. It has to feel completely uncooked. Here is the thing. It was, because Edward Furlong had never been in front of a camera before, casting director Molly Finn spotted him at the Pasadena Boys and Girls Club in September 1990. Cameron stated in the 2017 documentary T2, reprogramming the Terminator that Finn had passed on every industry-connected child performer because none produced the streetwise edge the script required. She literally just went out to find raw, untried talent, Cameron said. Once production began, the practical complications quickly became apparent. Furlong's voice broke during the 7-month shoot, requiring ADR on many of his lines to maintain consistent pitch. He also grew so much that for later scenes he had to stand in a small hole to maintain the correct height differential next to Linda Hamilton. The movie literally captures him growing up in real time. That untrained quality is precisely what makes John Connor feel like a real Reseda Latchkey kid rather than a polished child performance. Compare his very early scenes to the late Cyberdyne sequences, and you can see and hear the difference. The film could not have manufactured that. While Furlong was being discovered at a community center, his on-screen mother was undergoing a transformation that had begun 2 weeks after she gave birth. Number 13, Sarah Connor doing pull-ups in the asylum is one of the most iconic images in 1990 cinema. Those arms, that jaw, that absolute refusal to be frightened, it became a cultural shorthand for a new kind of female physical presence in action movies. What most people do not know is that the training started just 14 days after Linda Hamilton gave birth to her son Dalton in October 1989. Hamilton worked with personal trainer Anthony Cortez for 3 hours a day, 6 days a week for 13 weeks of pre-shoot preparation. The regimen covered running, biking, free weights, and walking lunges. Former Israeli commando Uzi Gal handled weapons and tactical training, drilling Hamilton on loading magazines, clearing rooms, and verifying kills. Per a 1991 Entertainment Weekly profile, she could bench press 85 pounds and pump load a 12-gauge shotgun with one arm before filming began. Arnold Schwarzenegger told reporters, "I come from the physical fitness world where you reshape and resculpt your body, but what I saw there was extraordinary." Hamilton told interviewers she had become an addict who couldn't let go. The cultural impact extended beyond the film. Self Magazine's May 1992 issue described a fantasy body composite that included Linda Hamilton's arms. The pull-up scene is not a camera trick. That is a 34-year-old new mother who trained for 6 months straight. While Hamilton was forging her body for the film, the studio funding the enterprise was sweating a budget that would not stop climbing. Number 12. Everything about Terminator 2 looks expensive, because it was. The canal jump, the helicopter chase, the steel mill finale, the liquid metal reforms, all of it required real infrastructure, real stunts, and real money at a scale Hollywood had not attempted before. At roughly $94 to $102 million, T2 became the most expensive film ever produced at the time, and trade headlines openly predicted it would bankrupt independent studio Carolco Pictures. Carolco co-founder Mario Kassar paid roughly $15 to $17 million just to acquire the rights from Hemdale, then paid James Cameron a $6 million writer-director fee. Schwarzenegger's $15 million salary was partly financed through a $12.75 million Gulfstream III jet given directly to the actor, an arrangement Kassar called a marketing coup because the cost could be amortized. ILM's T-1000 effects work alone cost $5.5 million across approximately 4 to 5 minutes of screen time. Cameron told Empire magazine that as the budget climbed toward $100 million, the studio was blanching. They thought they were screwed. Despite a $520 million worldwide gross, Carolco posted a $265 million loss in 1991 due to other failing projects and filed Chapter 11 4 years later. The film was profitable, but not enough to save the company. Every dollar is on the screen. Cameron kept the camera moving so nothing felt padded or static. All of that money had to be spent on an impossibly compressed schedule, because Cameron and his co-writer had just 7 weeks to write the entire film. Number 11. For a film with this level of structural complexity, this many thematic payoffs, and this many sequences that call back to each other across 137 minutes, 7 weeks is an almost incomprehensible amount of time to write it. A distribution deal with TriStar locked in a Memorial Day 1991 release window, giving Cameron and co-writer William Wisher exactly 6 to 7 weeks to deliver a complete screenplay. Cameron had initially imagined an Arnold versus Arnold concept built around 2 T-800 models. Wisher killed it in development bluntly. Having Arnold fight another Arnold is just boring. Boring, boring, boring. The two had been close creative friends since their teens in Brea, California, which gave them enough shorthand to work at speed. Wisher makes a brief cameo as a photographer in the mall sequence, and Cameron has confirmed the character is the same cop carjacked by the T-800 in the 1984 film. The recognition on his face is canon, not a throwaway reaction. The tight schedule also explains why theatrical prints reportedly were not delivered to cinemas until the night before the July 3, 1991 opening. That 7-week clock forced ruthless narrative discipline. Every scene had to earn its place, which is partly why the film has so few wasted moments for a blockbuster of its length. Once the screenplay was locked, the studio pushed back on one of its most iconic sequences. Number 10. The biker bar sequence is the entire brand of Terminator 2 compressed into 3 minutes. Schwarzenegger walks in nude, demands clothes, boots, and a motorcycle, and walks out as the T-800 you remember, leather jacket, aviator shades, fat boy Harley Davidson. George Thorogood's Bad to the Bone kicks in and the film announces itself. Without that scene, none of the iconic imagery exists. And Carolco tried to cut it. As the budget climbed from $75 million toward $100 million during production, studio executives proposed eliminating scenes to reduce costs. The bar sequence was specifically targeted. According to production accounts, the studio asked Schwarzenegger to lobby Cameron to drop it. His response was direct. Only a studio guy would cut a scene like that. The sequence was filmed at 12002 Osborne Street in Lakeview Terrace, at a real biker bar called The Corral. That location was later demolished and replaced by a branch of the Los Angeles Public Library. The physical setting that gave the T-800 his look no longer exists. Every T2 poster, every piece of merchandise, every "I'll be back" callback flows from a sequence a nervous studio wanted to delete. If Schwarzenegger had not dug in, the character's reintroduction would have been a quiet motorcycle theft rather than a cultural moment. And while the studio was fighting Schwarzenegger over an even bigger principle, Number 9. Every time the T-800 fires a weapon in this film, watch where the bullets land. Kneecaps, legs, shoulders. He'll live, Schwarzenegger mutters after dropping a security guard. John Connor says it outright. You can't just go around killing people. This was a deliberate creative choice by James Cameron, and Schwarzenegger thought it was the worst idea he had ever heard. When Schwarzenegger first read the script, he confronted Cameron at breakfast during the Cannes Film Festival. Cameron told The Ringer, he said, "Jim, I have a big problem with the script." I said, "What is it?" He said, "I don't kill anybody." At an Academy Museum panel, Schwarzenegger admitted he had wanted to escalate to 150 kills. Cameron's reply was firm. "Arnold, you are not going to kill one single person. Schwarzenegger called it the stupidest thing I've ever heard, and later credited Cameron as a genius writer for the decision. Cameron and co-writer William Wisher had structured the no-kill rule as the engine of the entire emotional arc. Without it, the steel mill thumbs up means nothing. With it, the thumbs up is proof that something was learned. Every gunshot in T2 was choreographed together by Cameron and Schwarzenegger to wound rather than kill. That is the most carefully executed restraint in the history of the action genre. And it came from an argument in France. While Schwarzenegger was negotiating his character's principles, the film's villain was discovered because the original villain crashed a motorcycle. Number 8. Robert Patrick's T-1000 is one of the great villain performances in American cinema. The blue-eyed dead stare, the police uniform menace, the way he tilts his head like a machine processing data, it is so precise that it is hard to imagine anyone else in the role. Someone else was in the role first. That someone was Billy Idol, and a motorcycle accident changed everything. Idol was reportedly set to play the T-1000 when he suffered a serious leg injury in February 1990 that made the physical demands impossible. Robert Patrick told The Hollywood Reporter, "Billy Idol was set to do the role of the T-1000, as I understand. I saw Billy's image when I went to Stan Winston, after I got the role. Unfortunately, he got into a motorcycle accident and busted up his leg, so he wasn't able to physically do what the role demanded." Patrick's agent pitched him to casting director Molly Finn as a cross between David Bowie and James Dean. He walked into the audition in black jeans, a black t-shirt, and a biker jacket with no script and no prepared material. Cameron told him afterward, "You were the only one who gave me a little scare there." Patrick's leanness was not incidental. Cameron and William Wisher had conceived the T-1000 as the structural opposite of the T-800, softer technology, infiltration over brute force. Patrick committed so completely that he broke the production on his very first chase day. All right, we're at the halfway mark, and things are about to get wilder. Before we hit the top 7, what's your favorite Terminator 2 quote or moment? Drop it in the comments. And if you're enjoying this, smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It really does help the channel grow. Number 7. The T-1000 signature sprint is one of the most distinctive pieces of physical performance in action cinema. Arms rigid at his sides, feet barely seeming to touch the ground, pace never varying. It reads as genuinely inhuman. It is also the result of an actor who trained 4 times a day and nearly broke the first day of shooting by being too fast. Patrick undertook a relentless running regimen and disciplined himself to breathe only through his nose during sprints. The approach worked so well that on the first day of the mall chase, he literally caught Edward Furlong on the dirt bike. Patrick told The Hollywood Reporter, "The first big chase sequence at the mall, I caught John. And I was like, what do I do now? And Jim was like, Jesus Christ. How fast can you run?" So they had to crank up the speed of John's dirt bike. Patrick also worked with armorer Harry Liu to master loading and reloading a 16-round Beretta magazine without breaking his eye line on Schwarzenegger, a specific Cameron requirement for the hallway confrontation. The straight-arm sprint exists because that is how Patrick's body actually moved at maximum effort. It was not an affectation or a costume choice. It is an actor who trained so hard that the production had to adjust. But Patrick's commitment was matched by a permanent physical cost paid by his co-star in the elevator. Number 6. The Pescadero Hospital elevator shootout is one of the most intense sequences in the film. Sarah and the T-800 unload weapons at the closing doors while the T-1000 closes from behind, and the confined space makes every shot feel catastrophic. That is not just good sound design. On the day that sequence was filmed, Linda Hamilton forgot to reinsert her earplugs between takes, and when the weapons discharged inside the enclosed elevator car, she suffered immediate and permanent hearing loss in one ear. Hamilton described the moment to Empire magazine. "To this day, I have serious hearing loss in one ear. We were shooting a scene in an elevator and I'd forgotten to put my earplugs in. The doors closed, we had shotguns and started blasting. And suddenly I was in agony. I fell to my knees in pain. I thought I'd been shot." The crew initially kept rolling because they assumed her collapse was part of the performance. Hamilton got back up and finished the take once she realized cameras were still running. That detail cuts through the polished mythology surrounding T2. Hamilton's physical commitment to this film was total, and it came with a real and permanent cost that persisted for decades after the production closed. Watch that elevator scene knowing what happened behind the performance. The eeriest visual trick in the steel mill, by contrast, required no special equipment at all. Number 5. The steel mill confrontation, where the T-1000 mimics Sarah Connor, is one of the most unsettling sequences in the film. Two Sarahs stand directly opposite each other, and only one is real. The effect is flawless and completely convincing. There is absolutely no CGI involved. Linda Hamilton's identical twin sister, Leslie Hamilton Guerin, a working emergency room and hospice nurse with no previous acting experience, played the double in 3 scenes with no compositing required. Guerin appeared as the other Sarah in the steel mill confrontation, in the playground nightmare sequence, and in the deleted CPU reset scene. The mirror in that reset scene was an empty frame separating 2 identically dressed sets, with Linda on one side handling a life-size Stan Winston puppet, while Leslie stood next to the real Arnold on the other. The choreography required the sisters to mirror each other's breathing and micro-expressions in real time. Leslie returned to nursing after filming and never acted again. She passed away in 2020 at the age of 63. At a moment when digital face replacement was not technically viable, Cameron achieved a perfect duplication effect by casting the only person alive who could naturally do it. The T-1000 as Sarah confrontation is 2 real human beings standing opposite each other, mirroring each other's movement. Stan Winston's practical work matched that scene with an equally extraordinary physical construction on another soundstage. Number 4. Every time the T-800's flesh peels back to the chrome skeleton beneath, or the future war machines march across a battlefield, or the damaged face stares through a fiber optic red eye in the steel mill, you are watching physical objects, not digital renders. Stan Winston's studio fabricated 4 complete T-800 endoskeletons for Terminator 2, built from hybrid urethane resin reinforced with fiberglass, weighing roughly 50 pounds versus the original 1984 model's 100-pound construction. 2 of the 4 were fully articulated, controlled by cable and radio mechanisms. The other 2 were rigid stand-ins. The lightweight new leg proved too fragile for the title sequence, where a boot crushes a skull, so the original 1984 steel leg had to be reattached because the newer version was not heavy enough to collapse the wax prop. Makeup artist Jeff Dawn applied the most extreme damage stage on roughly 30 separate shooting days, with each application taking approximately 5 hours. The third stage prosthetic, exposing a metal cheekbone and a fiber optic red eye, was reportedly realistic enough to frighten Schwarzenegger's young daughter when she visited the set. Stan Winston and Jeff Dawn won the Academy Award for Best Makeup. The practical endoskeleton work is so persuasive that viewers consistently failed to identify where the puppetry ended and the performance began. The most technically demanding work on the film, though, was happening at ILM in San Rafael, where a small team was building software that had never existed before. Walking through prison bars as liquid metal, morphing back into Robert Patrick at the end of the steel mill, these images are so familiar that it is easy to forget they had never been done before, because the tools required to create them did not exist until ILM built them specifically for Terminator 2. VFX supervisor Dennis Murin expanded the 6-person Abyss CGI team to 35 people to deliver the T-1000 work at a cost of $5.5 million for approximately 4 to 5 minutes of screen time. The team developed proprietary tools including Make Sticky, which locked textures to deforming geometry for the prison bar shot. CG supervisor Doug Smythe hand-modeled individual morph shapes on graph paper. John Knoll's software, called Photoshop, first commercially released in 1990, was used at ILM to repair torn geometry in renders. Some 15-second shots required 10 days of rendering time. Murin told Screen Crush, "This was the breakthrough film for photorealistic computer graphics and led directly to Jurassic Park." T2 won the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects, and the production is the moment Hollywood began its pivot from primarily practical to digital effects. Every photorealistic CGI character in modern cinema traces its lineage to those approximately 50 T-1000 shots. And while ILM was building the future in San Rafael, Cameron was executing a practical stunt that no insurance adjuster should have approved. Number 2, the freeway chase is one of the great sustained action sequences in cinema. The SWAT van, the tanker truck, the helicopter tracking from above. It builds until the T-1000's helicopter ducks under a Pacific Coast highway. Overpass. You probably assumed that shot was a miniature or a composite. It is neither. Vietnam-trained stunt pilot Chuck Tamburo flew a real Bell Jet Ranger under the real overpass twice and Cameron operated the camera himself because the operators refused to ride in the insert car. Tamburo had rolled the helicopter on wheels under the overpass to measure clearance and found 5 feet above the rotors, 5 feet below, and 4 feet on each side. He flew at roughly 60 knots because slower speeds would have generated dangerous rotor wash instability. Cameron described him on the DVD commentary as one of the best helicopter pilots in the business, possibly the best. Tamburo reportedly summarized the stakes: "If I made a mistake, I would be killed. We could have run a CG helicopter under the freeway overpass, but it was so much more fun to do the real thing." Stunt coordinator Joel Kramer earned what the New York Times called the largest stunt budget ever for a film at that time. The shot you assumed was a model is a real aircraft. A director who picked up the camera because no one else would. Now for the fact that changes how you see the entire ending. Number 1. The ending of Terminator 2, as audiences know it is the highway at night, the thumbs up, the T-800 lowering into the molten steel, and the words "the unknown future rolls toward us." It is one of cinema's great closing statements, ambiguous, melancholy, and quietly devastating. What almost no one knows is that Cameron shot a completely different conclusion and cut it before release. The alternate ending was an optimistic flash-forward set in 2029, showing an elderly Sarah Connor in a park watching an adult Senator John Connor push his young daughter on a swing. The sequence required Linda Hamilton to sit through 6 hours of old-age prosthetics applied by Stan Winston's studio. Sarah's voiceover reflected that Judgment Day never came, and John had lived a full and normal life. Test audiences reportedly felt the sequence was tonally inconsistent with the rest of the film. Mario Casar of Carolco objected that a definitive optimistic ending would close the franchise permanently. Cameron agreed to cut it. The footage later appeared in the 1993 special edition. The theatrical ending is not Cameron's first instinct. It is the version that survived after the studio closed one door and Cameron chose the image that left everything open. Watching the alternate ending makes the theatrical closing hit harder by contrast, because you understand exactly what Cameron gave up. The film you know is the result of every argument, accident, and discovery in this countdown coming together at exactly the right moment. Terminator 2 was not guaranteed to work. It was a $100 million bet on software that didn't exist, a child star found at a community center, and a villain discovered because the original broke his leg. Every argument became a feature. The no-kill rule Schwarzenegger hated became the film's soul. The twin sister available to exactly one production eliminated a technique that didn't exist. The alternate ending Cameron cut made the theatrical closing immortal. 3 decades later, the steel still glows, the thumbs up still lands, and somewhere a kid is seeing it for the first time. If this video surprised you, drop your favorite fact in the comments. Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who loves this movie as much as you do. And as always, no fate but what we make. We'll see you next time.